Welcome to the Future of Surrogacy, the podcast that explores the people, the innovations, and the ideas building the next generation of surrogacy. In surrogacy, where relationships and trust are everything, the fear of AI runs pretty deep. Sure, some are intrigued by it, but the majority are unsure of it, worried that it feels inappropriate for something as personal and human as surrogacy. But here's the question we want to wrestle with today. What if AI, specifically agent-based workflows, aren't here to take away human connection, but instead they're here to amplify it? So today, we'll unpack what an agentic workflow really means and why ignoring it could actually cost agencies the very thing they're most proud of, trust and deep connection. And there's no better person to guide us through this journey than Shraddha Jain, the Chief Technology Officer at Simbe. Before stepping into the surrogacy space, Shradha was building secure, machine learning-based platforms for the high-stakes finance industry. She's a seasoned engineer who loves turning complicated problems into simple, elegant solutions, always keeping the end user at the heart of the design. And here's why that matters for surrogacy agencies. Most agencies are running on a patchwork of disconnected tools, a CRM over here, a scheduling app over there, forms in another system. On the surface, it works, but the hidden cost is enormous, which we'll dig into today. So with that, welcome to the Future of Surrogacy, Shradha.
Hi, Erin. Thank you for having me. I think this is going to be a fun conversation.
It is. And so I want to start by talking through some of the patterns that we see in an agency owner, because I don't even think agency owners can recognize it in themselves because they think it's so normal. And if anybody hears a purring sound in the background, it's because my cat refuses to leave the microphone stand alone. So if we can hear,
I think Molly should be a regular. I love the background sound.
hopefully people find some peace in it. Okay, so one of the things that we notice a lot in the agency owners that they don't even recognize in themselves are how much context switching they do as part of their daily routines.
Yeah.
And what we mean by that is so many owners have built a workflow that works for them, but they don't understand the amount of brain energy that it takes, because they're like, oh, well, first, okay, so she comes in over here on this platform, and then we move her over here when we're doing X, and then we have to do this over here for Y. They know the flow, but the only place that's stitched together is in their heads.
Right. And it takes a lot of mental bandwidth to just remember where what goes. And I don't understand how they're able to, on top of that mental bandwidth, continue to put in the emotional effort that is required to be a case manager or an agency owner in surrogacy.
Yeah, and that's why they all get into it, is because typically they've had some kind of lived experience, whether on the surrogacy side or IP side. And so they get into it because they have these giant hearts and they want to help and they think it's going to be compassionate. But then these journeys, there's so many steps in these journeys and high stakes steps in these journeys that you can't mess up. And so for a lot of agency owners, the technology has turned into a necessary evil instead of a helper. So it feels like it's on the burden side of the house versus the opportunity side of the house. And I think that's what we want to talk about today in terms of whether or not you care or you are pro AI or against AI, just knowing that technology in general can to streamline, well, and also to give you back a little bit of that brain energy that we're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, agency owners get into this imagining they're going to, you know, spend hours holding hands for surrogates or IPs. But the reality is they end up spending hours making lists or kind of just repeating the same information over and over again to potential surrogates or IPs. And that's got to be draining without a proper tool that can adapt to your specific styles and requirements.
Yeah, and we talk to so many agencies now, and so we know what systems people are using, and also been interesting to me that there isn't one system. Like Monday.com, HubSpot, Zoho. There's so many different CRMs, but then they're trying to stitch together these other pieces for email marketing and text-based anything, but the CRM isn't connected to text. And so they have to know it or be messaging with the team constantly, and then the team has to be able to retain that information. It has become inefficient, and it doesn't have to be that way anymore.
No, not at all. Yeah, I think the tools that are being used are solving secondary problems. So surrogacy as a journey is extremely complex, and there's over 300 different steps somebody needs to, like a case manager needs to do throughout the process. There isn't a tool that does all of those things, and understandably, agency owners end up going with out of the box solutions that solve a problem, not their problem. And so they end up with 15 different applications that solve a problem. And then you quickly realize now you have a whole host of applications that don't know how to talk to each other.
Hmm.
And so, like you said, the context just ends up staying in somebody's head.
Hmm.
I guess a very silly analogy would be you're trying to make a casserole, but you end up buying a potato cutter. It solves a problem, but it doesn't solve your problem.
Okay, well, let's dig into it too. What is the opportunity cost
Mhm,
to an agency that
mhm.
has this stitched together system?
Yeah, I actually want to take a step back and actually try to address why I think agencies end up doing this patchwork quilt of solutions. So I think historically, agency owners are people who don't necessarily have a background in tech. They have a personal connection or they have an experience with surrogacy, and that's why they get into it. And tech isn't center of mind when they start the agency.
Right.
And so when you look at companies that have great solutions that are custom built for their purpose, you'll find that it's usually larger companies that have a lot of money, that have a lot of technical resources that are in-house, and they can build that sort of custom. They still end up using some solutions that exist, but they can build the integration layer with those custom solutions in-house.
Hmm.
I think by contrast, the surrogacy industry is generally small to medium business owners that don't have the resources, that don't have the know-how, and that's how you end up in this patchwork quilt that don't talk to each other kind of solutions.
Yep.
And so, to the question of opportunity cost, I think it's sadly the biggest thing that gets lost is data and the insights that come from having this data. So if your ads are living in Meta, your intake forms are living on like Jot forms, your text messages are happening on WhatsApp, nobody is truly integrating all that information to see any patterns that emerge in those various steps in those various systems. And if
What
you
do you mean
don't,
by patterns? Like, just give somebody an example in terms of what.
yeah. So if you don't have it all together, you're never going to notice that the biggest drop off point, for example, happens in the family medical history question. It's hard to notice these patterns that are seemingly small, but are going to have a significant impact on the bottom line for your agency.
Yeah, the way that big companies use that data
Hmm.
is they have analysts on staff to literally
Correct. Yeah.
analyze the data, and then that informs how they change their business practices. So if for your example, like if somebody's dropping off at that medical question, let's put in a video right there that says, "Hey, this next question could be kind of complicated,"
Mm.
or you can.
Or just reorganize it.
Yeah.
Ask a lot of other questions up front, wait for them to get really invested, and then ask the questions that are going to cause drop off.
Yeah.
There's a lot of solutions that will appear once you notice the patterns. And like you said, the bigger companies have in-house analysts, which is a luxury. But now with the advent of AI, that is a luxury that everybody can afford.
Right. Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit more because you are missing the bigger picture if these aren't
Yeah.
all stitched together where the data can be used to derive insight and then inform your business practices.
Mhm.
So, kind of let's demystify this idea of what does an agentic workflow even mean?
I know it's the buzzword. Everybody's talking about agentic workflows.
Yeah.
It's very simple. I like to think of it as kind of like hiring new team members, except they are not multidimensional people. Agents are like a piece of software that are good at doing one very hyper specific task really well. So, for example, you can and should have a note taking agent. So, For example, when we do, like at Simbe now, when we do calls, none of us are taking notes because we are all engaged in the conversation. We're using our brains to contribute in the conversation, and we're not splitting our time between, hey, somebody needs to take notes. You have an AI that's listening, and the sole job this AI agent has is to summarize and take notes.
Like, I think it's worth saying, because I don't think everybody even knows how to use them. They're way better than humans at synthesizing the summary of the meeting, who said what, where the majority of the focus was, what the tone was. They're incredible.
And chances are they're included in whatever application you're using already to do meetings. Google, Zoom, they all have their agents that you can just click and deploy in your meetings.
Yeah.
Similarly, you can have a scheduling agent whose sole job is to find time in your calendar and schedule meetings with the task list that you have. Again, agents really are interns, maybe, that have really specific single-minded tasks. They are not full-dimensional, multidimensional people. They're goal-oriented, and they perform best when you give them one single goal.
Yeah. This is a funny quote from a new client of ours, but when I was first doing the demo with this new client, the intake coordinator was pretty chilly on the call for the first 20 minutes or so. And
Yeah.
then she warmed up. And at the end of the call, she was like, "Oh man, I thought Riley was going to replace me, but now I see how Riley will just help me be better."
Yeah.
So I think that's because I think one of the fears of AI is it's going to replace humans. And there is no way humans will
I
ever
mean,
replace in surrogacy.
AI is very smart. It can do a lot of things, but I don't think it can do anything perfectly. So it is always going to be a tool that humans need to use in order to be more efficient, do things faster, do things better, multitask and do 15 different things instead of 5 different things. But it is never really going to replace humans.
Yeah, I think one of the beauties, though, of agents is they don't need to sleep. They can be available when you are spending time with your family. We've always had this kind of two-dimensional relationship with work
Yeah.
where it's like I'm either on or off kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in surrogacy or in any kind of family building pathway, nobody ever gets to be quote unquote off. And so just this idea of how do you use agents smartly so that you don't burn out?
Yeah. And, as I was saying before, I think agency owners or case managers end up doing a lot of repetitive work. They end
Mm,
up repeating the same information to every new surrogate candidate or IP. And a very easy application for agentic AI in surrogacy would be to deploy a knowledge base agent, something that understands your specific agency, what makes you different, what are your workflows, what money the surrogate can make, or how much say she has, for example, in matching with an IP. Questions that a surrogate will naturally have, and the answers don't change. It's repetitive information. So the case manager, instead of answering those questions at 9 p.m., can deploy and rest assured that the knowledge based agent is answering those questions 95% accurately
yeah,
and maintaining a little bit of oversight on the answers, but they're answering that question while you're enjoying dinner with your family.
right. Yeah. Yes, and I'll just say it again because I just think, like, every time you or your team has to jump between system A and system B or be reconciling 2 different sets or 3 different sets of information, you're burning mental bandwidth. So you are you're burning out your team, but you're also losing the chance to see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But so there are, like, there are ways to make your life
Yeah.
simpler by using AI.
Yeah.
And I'm dying for someone to please invent the agent that will schedule summer camps for me.
I think, to talk about the fear of agentic AI, I would imagine there was a similar sense of fear when the internet first came out. And a lot of people thought, oh my God, it's going to replace everything and it's going to make people stupider. And in some ways, maybe, but in a lot of other ways, and overwhelmingly have made people smarter, more efficient, able to do a lot more things. And so I think it's a little bit natural to be fearful of it because it's new.
I was around when the internet came out, Shraddha.
How was it?
Well, there was a lot of skeptics. I remember I was working at a company in the marketing department, And the VP of marketing was like, well, we got to build this thing called a website. And he's like, I don't know how long these are going to be around, but we got to build it. Jump on
Yeah.
the bandwagon. I follow Reid Hoffman, he's the founder of LinkedIn, and I just really like his stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But he talks about photography. He says he's like, when photography came out, everyone thought it was going to put painting out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course that's not the case. So if we have changed any minds, or at least opened a new door in somebody's brain about agentic in surrogacy, what does that mean? That this is a complete overhaul of all their systems to be quote unquote agentic? Or is there a, let's crawl before we walk, before we run?
Yeah. The beauty here is, if we were just talking about tech, a centralized tech platform to solve their patchwork quilt of application problem 5 years ago, unfortunately, it would be, sorry, you kind of have to just move everything to a new platform. But with AI, you really, really don't. You can just have AI sit in the integration spots between your applications. So, like, for example, we, at Simbe, we're using Riley to sit between Meta and the application forms and the CRM. And it makes pulling data from all of these different platforms very, very simple.
Okay, so it's bridge in
Yeah,
between,
a bridge.
so that all the systems can now talk to each other. And so now they're all bridged together, so the data can flow freely from one to the other. And then what though? Because that's the other thing. Like, these surrogacy agencies don't have analysts on staff. So what can now agencies see?
Right. So like you said, it's not about more data, right? It's about the right data presented in the right way to start seeing drop off points. As far as I understand, for agency owners, surrogates dropping off is a big problem. So you can see exactly where in the application she's dropping off. You can see which questions are causing anxiety, for example. Like with Riley, she's able to have a conversation with the surrogate at 1 a.m. if needed, and you can flag those concerns early on for the case manager, so that when they actually do have a conversation with the surrogate, they know what the risk factors are and how to address them. You can surface them forward. You can understand, for example, what are the bottlenecks? Are the delays happening from the agency side? Is it happening from the surrogate side?
And it should also provide more time, and that's what we're seeing with our clients
Correct.
too. Like,
Yeah.
you'll have more, because you're not doing the kind of task-oriented activities as much,
Yeah.
because agents can take care of those things for you. But you have more time then to have oversight into that. You have more time to be looking at that data. You have
Yeah.
more time to be deriving insights to inform best practices, and then
Right.
improving those best practices. So
Yeah.
it's that brain space that you get back.
Absolutely. And that's where creativity happens, right? If you're always in survival mode, you're not going to be able to find the time and energy and creativity needed to like make that next milestone happen.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, when anybody gets buried, for example, my personal life, I don't feel like I have the time to think, because I'm just surviving
Yeah.
the tasks.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
then with AI, you can become an orchestrator of your life, of your company, of your work, rather than a task executor,
yeah. And I like that this doesn't have to be a massive overhaul for these agencies, because they don't have the bandwidth to do that, or to retrain staff or anything like
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. The beauty is you can train AI. The more you train her, the more data she gets, the more accurate she's going to get over time.
I do
So
think what you're saying in terms of what agents can do, again, like, they never get tired, they don't ever sleep,
yeah.
is and humans do. And so these are super intense, high commitment journeys. And so
Right.
it takes, 25 to 30 touches on a particular surrogate candidate before they may even be ready to move to the next step. And yet an
Right.
intake coordinator is like, look, I can maybe touch her 7 or 8 times, but then I need to move on, because
Right.
I only have so much time. And like, that is a perfect use case for this.
And to integrate AI with the intake coordinator, it isn't about the AI making the decision of, well, is 7 touch points enough for this one? Should be rejected. It's about collecting all the information and presenting it so that all the intake coordinator has to do is make that decision. She doesn't actually have to go, or they don't actually have to go and make those touch points. It takes away all of that repetitive work out of her way so that she's just making intelligent decisions based on all of the data that's been collected by a sleepless, tireless agent.
Yeah. And then that's where you do get that space to start brainstorming again, because we had a client the other day that was like, wait, so can we use this on our application process? Where these huge long forms to fill out, and
Yeah,
nobody wants to do that. And so how
correct.
do you use an agent to help somebody fill that out, or pre-populate and then help? Or, like,
Right, or answer questions about some of these questions on the form, right? Like, especially for first-time surrogates, they probably don't understand the process. They wanna nervous about filling it out. They wanna know what preeclampsia is, or why are you asking me about that, and what does that mean? Yeah,
maybe I feel like I had postpartum, but I wasn't diagnosed with postpartum. So do I say no to this question?
right.
Because there's so much gray area in some of those questions too. And so AI agents can collect the gray area that then the human
Mhm.
can make the decision on.
Correct, yeah.
I know this is sounding like a massive pitch, but being able to surface the data and then see the patterns, like maybe you realize, like, oh, now I know it takes us 47 days to go from this person
Mhm,
clicked add to this person is done with medical screening. Now you can see that entire process, and there's an average of 47 days. So that gives your business some predictability, that you're like, all right, like if we get 100 surrogates in the door, then in 47 days we should have X amount qualified through screening. So that means we can
mhm.
bring X amount of IPs, because we have,
Right.
like, you have the predictability with the data.
We notice our agencies are manually entering information about all the conversations they've had on text or call. Now, imagine if you have a note taking AI that's deployed, automatically just puts the information in your CRM. You have Riley that's having these conversations. She's also automatically just putting all these information in CRM. You no longer have to do all of these menial kind of tasks that just take up so much of your brain space.
Yeah, and I know a lot of agencies think that that initial phone call is very, very important in terms of tone and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we're not saying you shouldn't have that conversation. We're just saying, like, let Riley pre-qualify them via text,
Yeah.
and then once they're qualified, hop on the phone with them.
Absolutely.
But okay, so I know that we have been all like puppies and rainbows about AI, and there are some things to look out for sure.
Absolutely.
So why don't we, because we've been very promotional about AI, but there's two sides to every coin.
Yeah.
And so let's start with kind of the red flags, or the guardrails in AI.
Yeah. I mean, we've said it one too many times, but I'll say it again. What you should expect from your AI is, again, automatic, repetitive tasks like note taking, reminders, scheduling, etc., collecting and structuring messy data so it's easy for you to act on, flagging any concerns, but not resolving them at all. So, what that leaves for humans, what still absolutely needs to be human centric, is things that require judgment, things that require empathy or long term context. AI is not built and is actually very bad at long term context. So, for example, say somebody needs to pause their application because they lost a job. Now, if you had AI deployed there to make that decision, it would see it as black and white and say, well, this is not a great candidate at all. But a human knows that the surrogacy compensation itself might be good, or the loss of job is a temporary problem, or they might have a partner that can support them through it. It's not necessarily a fail. It means it's a flag and there's a concern there that you need to address, but it shouldn't mean a rejection. And with AI, you can run the risk of that rejection if the AI had the authority to make that decision.
Right.
So, for anything that requires approvals or disqualifications or handling sensitive conversations should still be human centric.
But what about, because I know a lot of our agency partners in the initial qualifying form are asking, like, have you ever been diagnosed with a mental health condition?
Yeah, I think The AI is capable of asking those questions, and we can train it to be sensitive and train it to flag it as a potential concern. But the AI should never be making a decision based on that. It shouldn't say, well, this person had postpartum depression, so they're not a fit. That
Right.
judgment, that like ambiguous space, that gray area should always be actionable by a human being. AI is not built for that.
That's good. So the distinction there is it's an information collector, not a decision maker.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have another question for you that I'm curious about because I
Mhm.
know how important is category expertise when choosing like an AI tech partner?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I so going back to what I said about what an agent is, it is a piece of software that can do one very specific task well. It is not built to do a lot of different things well. Now you can go to ChatGPT and it will answer everything for you. So you might think, hey, it's general purpose. It can answer all my questions. Why not just use this? As you interact with it, you will soon realize that it's, mile wide, but an inch deep in some ways. So, in a space like surrogacy, where there's a lot of unique legal and ethical and emotional dynamics, you want to use a tech that is built specifically for sensitive journeys like this, who can handle a lot of the gray area that comes with this space. Now
Mhm.
you might be able to use something that's built general purpose, but you are risking, you know, like I said, the nuances that come with it. And if you get it wrong, you aren't only wasting money, you're risking trust, which is again everything in surrogacy.
Yeah. I know I was listening to a AI podcast the other day and people that are pioneering the AI industry right now were talking about how their biggest prediction is specialization in
Yeah, absolutely.
people. There'll be, and there already is like AI in healthcare, AI in retail, AI in
Yeah.
travel, AI in family building, AI because of that problem that you just said. They recognize if you want this to be really effective for particular industries, you have to build AI for those particular industries.
Yeah, and it's the same argument about using a general purpose software,
Right.
and that's how you ended up with this patchwork of like applications you're using. It solves a problem, it doesn't solve your problem. So you definitely want to use something that's at least built for healthcare.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we all have heard about AI hallucinating. And so how do you keep AI in line?
Yeah, this is not a problem that's going to entirely go away. I think AI will always make some mistakes. Again, big argument for why you can't replace humans with them, but there are some guardrails that you can put in place to minimize the impact of the mistakes that AI is going to make or the hallucinations it's going to have. So the biggest one is, you want to define really clear roles or boundaries for what it can and cannot do, what it is allowed and not allowed to do. And that's all in the prompt engineering, or which is a fancy way of saying how you train your AI. You want to have audit trails of everything. Any suggestions the AI has made, any conversations it's had, any reasoning it's used in order to make classifications of conversations, you want to log it all so that you can go in and understand where it made a mistake, how you can fix it. And then there's an aspect of cultural education that teams need to do about AI. I think it's easy to start treating AI as your authority. I think it's very important to understand that it's kind of like your assistant, not your authority. And so ultimate oversight is yours. It goes back into the like AI shouldn't be making decisions, but there is a cultural team training that companies need to do.
I know. I mean, it is funny because like I'll use ChatGPT every day. And I'm realizing as you're speaking that I've never heard it say, I don't really know, but I would think that, yada, yada, yada. Because it speaks so declaratively and
Yeah.
directly, it's like I understand why people think it's like, oh, wow, they know the answer.
Yeah.
Because that's how humans, like when somebody speaks quickly,
Mhm.
declaratively, and directly, people are like, oh, they know it.
And
And
it's
it's,
very easy to make that mistake. I still make that mistake. Like last week, I was trying to buy a connector for my external monitor and my computer, and I had GPT do the research for me. I bought it, And it turns out it doesn't work with Mac. Even though I told it, like, this is my setup, I use MacBook, I don't use Windows,
Yeah.
they are going to make mistakes. And it's on me to check what it's suggested I should do.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this just to give some people some context, and no one's going to hold you to this, Shraddha. If agency owners are like, I know I need to involve some kind of AI, and uh, what you're talking about sounds good. Like, I want the time back so that I can have the time to brainstorm to improve the experience even more. Is this it's going to take a year to get up and running and it's $50,000, or how should agency owners be ballparking expectations around that?
Oh my God, they're like Legos. You can stack them one on top of the other. So because you can have something be really, 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 really specific, you could deploy a small agent doing one small thing in a week. And then you can add friends for it. You can have a note-taking agent deployed in a week. You can have a knowledge-based agent deployed in a month. It's not a year-long project. It is a very incremental, very easily stackable network of agents that you can deploy.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'm not asking you the magic wand yet. That's still coming. But if you had to summarize, kind of what are the big takeaways when agency owners are thinking about AI, and especially for the ones that had some fear around whether or not this technology has a place in something as important as family building, what do you say?
Yeah, I think there's a version of an AI solution for every level of hesitance or fearfulness. You could be on the very like bullish end of it and say, I'm sold. I want to just do everything AI. I want it to do everything except make decisions. There's a solution for that. You could be like, I'm cautious. I don't really know. Maybe not have conversations with any of my clients yet. You can deploy something like an invisible AI, and something, what I mean by that is something that is just kind of integrating your data together at first and isn't necessarily talking to your surrogates to begin with. Kind of dip your toe, and see how it works, see how you feel about it, and then progress from there. There's no one solution fits all in this. I think it's very custom, which is at par with how the surrogacy agencies work. Everybody's workflow is different, everybody's processes are custom. And
Yeah. And the other thing is we've been talking about AI specifically with surrogates, but there's also, I mean, there's repetitive tasks on the IP side of the house too. That
yeah,
if you're like, I don't want it anywhere near surrogates to start, and you just wanted to integrate on the IP side, like that's also an option.
that's an option if you wanna have it be on the medical data collection side of things, which is completely invisible to your IPs or surrogates. That's another option. There's tons of applications of AI. I think it's about your comfort level and what is your hair on fire problem that you want to solve.
Yeah, background checks too.
Yeah.
Okay, magic wand. So I hope you know how this works, but you get one. People cheat. You get one. So if you had a magic wand and you could build one tool tomorrow to transform surrogacy, what would it be?
Man, I'm a sucker for data. Have lived my career in tech and data, so I gotta go with something there. Yeah, I think the way the industry currently is, very understandably, people are protective about their competitive edge. And oftentimes that results in being kind of cagey or competitive about your data. And it doesn't even have to be, you know, identifiable data about surrogates. You don't have to share your surrogates. And I would build a tool, if I had a magic wand, to share trends, patterns, things that can help the entire industry as a whole, sort of like the rising tides lift all boats situation. And we've been at Simbe, we've been talking a lot about like the problem of medical data in surrogacy, and so we've been doing a lot of research, and pretty recently we came across the TEFCA model that exists in medical data, and it stands for I trusted exchange framework or something like that. But the idea is, if you are drawing data from a system, you also contribute that data back. And so the general health of information you have that is helpful to everybody that's part of this system gets healthier, gets better. So you could do something like, hey, I figured that I think in my agency, we've noticed that candidates don't apply very much in December. That kind of stuff that doesn't really give away any candidates you have, but does help the industry overall.
Or demographic information like,
Correct.
whoa, are the majority of surrogates, are 90% of them coming from a few areas?
Right.
What are the dynamics of that area, or age, ethnicity, financial status? Again, like obviously nothing identifiable, but the patterns on the back end that could help to inform policies, procedures,
Yeah.
regulations. I know that's kind of a bad word in surrogacy, but but or the right regulations, because I come from adoption where they made the wrong regulations because they didn't have the data.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you let the lawmakers make the regulations without data, the
They're
regulations.
gonna make the wrong ones. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, yeah, that's my answer for the magic wand. I would love to build a non-identifiable, non-risky, you're not going to lose your competitive edge platform to share data and build sort of like a mutually beneficial space for agencies to kind of take the benefits of, rising tides.
Gosh, that would be really cool to have a system where everybody was contributing to it anonymously. So it's not like, oh, they only did X amount of journeys. Nobody would see that. It's just the
Mm-mm.
data around what you are doing would be submitted so that people, but then it becomes like, well, who gets to see, like who has access to
It's
that?
like this reminds me of this is completely different, but this reminds me of the travel platform that I'm part of and we've talked about, like Kindred, right?
Yeah,
You can only be a member if your own house is listed on the platform.
right.
So this is a home exchange platform for people who don't know. You can stay at people's homes. They're not Airbnb. You don't pay money for it. You pay credits, and you earn credits by hosting people at your own home. And so the general health and quality of people on this platform is just better. They're not going to treat your home badly if their own home is in
On the
in
platform.
use by another set of people. So
We're staying at a kindred house when we go to Seeds.
that's correct. Yeah, it's so beautiful. I'm excited.
I am excited too. It's great. I can't wait. Wait, I love Kindred.
Yeah, so it's like a similar concept of, a close-knit community that is going to take care of the products that are there because they have a personal stake in it.
Oh, I like that as a magic wand, Shraddha. Okay, well, I know we've kept you for a long time, and we are so grateful for your insights. And you can always find Shraddha at Simbe if you want to talk
Yay.
more AI with her. So thanks for being here, Shraddha.
Of course, thank you. This was really fun. I hope this was insightful for people who listen to it.
I'm sure it will be. Thanks so much for listening to The Future of Surrogacy. If you liked today's episode, send it to a friend or a colleague that should hear it. And be sure to follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn to keep up with new episodes and behind the scenes updates. And if there's a topic you want us to cover or someone you think we should talk to, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time.